Good evening, I'm Katie Wilson and you are watching A News. Here are your top stories for tonight. China announces a series of retaliatory measures against US tariffs starting April the 10th. South Korea's political crisis persists as the Constitutional Court upholds Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. Azerbaijan hosts the 11th ministerial meeting of the Southern Gas Corridor and the 3rd ministerial meeting of the Green Energy Advisory Councils. China on Friday announced a series of retaliatory measures against US tariffs, including an additional 34% tariff on all US goods starting April the 10th. This follows President Trump's recent imposition of a 34% tariff on Chinese products, bringing the total US tariff on Chinese goods to 54%. In addition to the tariffs, China introduced export controls on key rare earth elements, critical for manufacturing and defense technologies. Beijing also filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization over Trump's tariffs. Furthermore, 11 foreign entities were added to China's unreliable entity list, allowing for potential sanctions. US stocks opened sharply lower, with Wall Street facing a significant downturn after China announced new tariffs on US goods. The tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped more than 20% from its highest point in December, putting it on track to enter a bear market. The market downturn follows President Trump's tariff hike, which triggered the new retaliatory tariffs from China. Major tech stocks, including Apple and Amazon, saw significant losses. Bank stocks also dropped as fears about slower growth spread. The US stock market has taken a hit since President Trump announced the imposition of new tariffs on foreign trade this week. But the White House remains confident in Trump's trade policies to protect key US industries. Ubi Shabandar has more from Washington.
President Trump remains confident that the tariffs that he signed into effect this week will play out positively for the American economy, a day after declaring Liberation Day for the United States and signing the most sweeping set of tariffs on foreign goods in modern American memory. The markets here in the U.S. remain volatile, with a sell-off on Wall Street taking place after the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, issued an assessment warning of inflation and a potential economic slowdown. President Trump hit back on social media, telling Powell that now is the time for the Fed to lower interest rates in order to help boost the economy. The White House also released the monthly jobs report, indicating that 228,000 jobs were added in the month of March, indicating that the labor market remains on solid footing and exceeded analyst expectations. President Trump also reacted to China issuing its own retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. He blasted Beijing on social media and warned that China, quote, is playing it wrong. They panicked. Despite the detractors, Trump also posted on social media that his policies will never change, and he urged investors that now is the time to invest in the U.S. and that, quote, it was a great time to get rich. Hitting back at critics, the White House also highlighted on Friday specific cases of car manufacturing plants in the U.S. that were now increasing production lines due to the tariffs and thus adding more jobs. The recent dip in the stock market may be a reflection of retail investors' anxiety on how the tariffs will play out. But the White House has said that they remain confident that over time, President Trump's tariffs will prove to be a massive boost to the economy. Ube Shabander, A News, Washington, D.C.
The International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva warns that US President Donald Trump's new tariffs could threaten global economic stability, calling them a significant risk amid rising trade tensions. In her statement, she said they have the potential to deepen uncertainty and hinder growth, particularly in an already fragile economic climate. This comes amid growing global fears that rising trade tensions could disrupt international markets. The IMF is analysing the broader effects, with further insights to be provided in their upcoming World Economic Outlook.
We are still assessing the macroeconomic implications of the announced tariff measures, but they clearly represent a significant risk to the global outlook at a time of sluggish growth. It is important to avoid steps that could further harm the world economy. We appeal to the United States and its trading partners to work constructively to resolve trade tensions and reduce uncertainty.
South Korea's Constitutional Court has removed President Yoon Suk-yeol from office following his controversial martial law declaration 4 months ago. The court's unanimous ruling comes after more than 3 months of political turmoil and impeachment proceedings.
There were celebrations outside South Korea's Constitutional Court after a unanimous ruling to remove President Yoon Suk-yeol from office on Friday. It's 4 months after his controversial declaration of martial law that sparked political turmoil in the country. There were also tears from his supporters, who sat motionless after the ruling. The unanimous ruling follows more than 3 months after the opposition-controlled National Assembly voted to impeach Yoon. Yoon's martial law declaration and impeachment have deeply divided the nation, and experts warn that protests may intensify. On December the 3rd last year, Yoon declared martial law, deploying hundreds of soldiers and police officers to the National Assembly. He argued he was maintaining order, but some military and police officials have testified that they were ordered to prevent lawmakers from voting on his decree. Despite the attempt, they managed to hold a vote, unanimously rejecting Yoon's decree. 10 days later, on December the 14th, the National Assembly impeached Yoon, accusing him of violating the constitution, suppressing legislative activities, attempting to detain politicians, and threatening the nation's peace. South Korea must now hold a national election within the next 2 months for a new president. Early surveys show Lee Jae-myung, leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, as the frontrunner. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will continue to serve as acting president until the new president is inaugurated.
The NATO foreign ministers' meeting in Brussels continues with key discussions on the US push for NATO members to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio also stated that it will soon be clear whether Russia is truly committed to peace with Ukraine.
The NATO Foreign Ministers' Summit in Brussels has addressed several critical issues that could redefine the future of the alliance. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has reiterated the US demand for NATO members to increase their defence spending, setting an ambitious target of 5% of GDP, up from the current 2% goal. Rubio emphasised that while reaching this target won't happen overnight, NATO must establish a clear pathway to achieving it.
The events of the last few years, a full-scale ground war in the heart of Europe, is a reminder that hard power is still necessary as a deterrent. And so we do want to leave here with an understanding that we are on a pathway, a realistic pathway, to every single one of the members committing and fulfilling a promise to reach up to 5% of spending. That includes the United States will have to increase its percentage.
Poland, responding to the growing threat from Russia, has already committed to spending 5% of its GDP on defence by 2026.
Poland plans to spend 4.7% of GDP this year, the most among NATO countries, among European Union countries. We will continue this. 5% is definitely the goal that we want to achieve next year, to get closer and closer to 5%. And even due to the multi-year contracts that we have signed, we have to maintain a high level of spending for years to come.
The Russia-Ukraine war remained a top concern at the summit. NATO allies were urging Moscow to engage in serious peace talks. Ukraine has shown a willingness to accept a ceasefire, but the outcome depends largely on Russia's response. US officials have stated that the US will soon determine whether Russia is serious about peace.
We will know soon enough, in a matter of weeks, not months, whether Russia is serious about peace or not. I hope they are. It would be good for the world if that war ended. But obviously we have to test that proposition.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte weighed in on the ongoing security challenges, emphasising that NATO is united in its commitment to strengthening defence and supporting Ukraine.
For NATO, it's clear. For the whole of NATO, Russia is the long-term threat. even if this war will come to an end. Let's not be naive about Russia. Nobody is naive about Russia. But when it comes to ending the war, I think it is important that the Americans are trying this, working closely with the Ukrainians.
Rutte also addressed concerns about Trump's new tariffs, noting that the tariffs do not violate NATO's economic principles. He explained that while these tariffs have caused some disruption, they do not go against the core goals of NATO. Rubio also defended the tariffs, explaining that while markets are reacting to shifts in global trade, the situation is not an economic collapse. He argued that once businesses adjust to the new trade rules, markets will stabilise.
Turkey and the European Union are taking concrete steps to revitalise and strengthen their economic partnership. After a 6-year pause, high-level economic dialogue has resumed, signalling a potential new chapter in relations between Ankara and Brussels.
Turkey and the European Union have reached a consensus on deepening economic ties and expanding cooperation across all sectors. That's according to the Turkish Finance Minister Mehmet Şimşek. The breakthrough came during the first high-level economic dialogue meeting in 6 years, held in Brussels. Key topics on the agenda included the long-awaited modernization of the customs union and steps toward visa facilitation, both major points of contention and negotiation in Turkey-EU relations for years. A joint statement called the meeting a significant step toward deepening bilateral ties. Officials exchanged views on recent economic policy developments in both Turkey and the EU, especially within the context of global economic uncertainty. The discussions also touched on the European Union's recent competitiveness initiatives as well as Turkey's ongoing structural reforms under its economic reform program for 2025 to 2027, aimed at boosting productivity and long-term growth. Both parties agreed to hold the next round of high-level economic dialogue in Turkey.
Tensions between the US and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program have escalated, while Russia emphasizes that the issue should be resolved through diplomacy and restraint. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov affirmed Russia's ongoing alliance with Iran while working to improve relations with the United States. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has threatened military action against Iran unless a deal is reached on its nuclear program. Trump previously warned that Iran is nearing the development of a nuclear bomb, a claim Tehran denies, insisting its nuclear ambitions are for peaceful energy purposes. In support of diplomacy, Russia has offered to mediate between the two nations. In the midst of a turbulent geopolitical landscape, the European Union is turning its attention to Central Asia, seeing it as a reliable partner in securing critical raw minerals and green energy sources. Today, at the first ever summit between the European Union and Central Asian countries in Samarkand, leaders agreed to elevate their cooperation to a strategic partnership. Our correspondent in the region, Fariza Kalamazina, has more.
Brussels has announced a new €12 billion investment package for the region as part of its Global Gateway initiative. Of this amount, €3 billion will be allocated to the transport sector, €2.5 billion for critical raw materials, €6.4 billion for energy, and €100 million for the development of satellite internet in Central Asia. Some of these projects have already been approved and supported by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. As part of this new partnership, the President of the European Commission outlined 4 key areas for collaboration. First up, transport corridors. The European Union is committing €10 billion to develop the Trans-Caspian Transport Corridor, which will cut the land road between Europe and Central Asia by nearly half, down to just 15 days. Next, on critical raw materials, Ursula von der Leyen called Central Asia a treasure trove, highlighting its massive reserves of manganese, graphite, and other vital minerals. But Europe's approach is different. Rather than just extracting raw materials, the European Union is aiming to help create a full production cycle right in the region. In terms of renewable energy, the European Union sees Central Asia as a potential global hub. the President of the European Commission highlighted two major projects, the Ragun hydroelectric power plant in Tajikistan and the Kambarata hydroelectric power plant in Kyrgyzstan. Ursula von der Leyen called for expanding cooperation to help Central Asia become more energy independent and contribute to the global clean energy transition. The fourth area focuses on digital communications and satellite internet. The European Union is launching a satellite program to connect remote areas across the region. In turn, the leaders of Central Asia have expressed their commitment to strengthening trade ties. Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said that the country is ready to boost exports to the European Union across 175 key commodities, totaling more than $2 billion. Kazakhstan already produces 19 of the 34 raw materials the European Union needs, including uranium, copper, and lithium. In this context, President Tokayev proposed establishing a regional research center for rare earth metals in Astana. At the summit, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev stressed the importance of regional security, particularly cooperation with Afghanistan. He called for constructive dialogue between the international community and the Afghan government. To solidify this partnership, Mirziyoyev proposed annual meetings at the Deputy Prime Minister level and the creation of a partnership committee. He also suggested that a roadmap be developed to implement the agreements made at the summit and that it be ready within a month. Fariza Kalimursina for A News in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Azerbaijan's expanding influence in securing Europe's energy future is taking centre stage with the 11th ministerial meeting of the Southern Gas Corridor Advisory Council and the 3rd ministerial meeting of the Green Energy Advisory Council. Representatives from around 24 countries, along with numerous international financial institutions and energy companies, are participating in discussions on trading green energy and exploring new partnerships.
$45 billion cubic meters. That's how much Azerbaijani gas has flowed to Europe through Trans-Adriatic pipeline. But today in Baku, it's not just about numbers. Ministers, financiers and energy giants from 24 countries are gathering here to discuss what comes next, not just for the Southern Gas Corridor, but for the continent's green future.
Distinguished ministers, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to welcome you to the 11th ministerial meeting of the Southern Gas Corridor Advisory Council. Initiated by Azerbaijan and supported by European Commission, this important gathering played a crucial role in elaborating approaches to energy security, addressing the issues of energy security, and coordinating our joint efforts. And today, while we had a family photo procedure, I said that we will need probably more space for that because the team is growing, and this is a very good sign of our cooperation. The more time passes, the more countries and companies are involved in the process, united with a common goal. First, to strengthen cooperation, because without cooperation, none of the energy security projects would be possible. And second, to provide energy security for themselves, for their neighbors, and for the partners. And I think the very positive spirit of partnership and cooperation which unites us is a clear demonstration of our responsibility. Responsibility of producers, transitors, and consumers. And of course, the balance of interest between the three major actors of this process, with the support of international financial institutions, made our story or stories success stories. Countries, their governments, investors, companies, leading international financial institutions. So this is our team, and the team is growing.
The Southern Gas Corridor Advisory Council is an important part of such efforts to oversee the operation of the corridor, to tackle methane emissions from the oil and gas sector, and to promote energy efficiency, renewable deployment, and electricity grid development. But our work is not just about meeting the challenges of today. It is about charting a path towards our future. And that is why we are working to establish a green energy corridor between the South Caucasus and the European Union.
Speaking exclusively to A News, the General Manager of the Trans-Anatolian Natural Gas Pipeline in Turkey, Saltuk Düzyol, told our colleague Fikret Daluhanov that they're ready to scale up to delivering 31 billion cubic metres annually without laying a single new pipe. When asked whether there's further potential to expand the Southern Gas Corridor from both the Turkish and European sides, Düzyol said that rising demand in strategic cooperation could pave the way for even greater capacity and connectivity in the region.
Actually, we have designed our pipeline for 31 billion cubic meters per annum, although we have invested only for 16 billion cubic meters for the moment in the first two phases. But we are quite optimistic about the expansion of our network. Of course, it is not only dependent on TANAP, but also the other pipelines on the corridor. We have to heavily invest together in this project. We have a big potential, especially the ongoing developments in Europe and the rest of the world. I think there will be a gas demand, especially for countries in the Southeast Europe, for additional volumes of gas, exportable gas from Azerbaijan. If the investment decision is taken, I mean, today, it takes some 4 to 5 years to make the gas available for European gas markets, additional gas available. Actually, we have already gone through some engineering studies for our part, for TANAP. We have made a kind of a pre-FEED study for various scenarios, for various expansion scenarios. Actually, at TANAP, initially, we have kept the pipe diameter big, I mean, it's 56-inch pipeline, so easily it can be expanded up to 31 billion cubic meters, as I told you. By adding some new units to the existing compressor stations and by investing in new compressor stations, we can easily achieve this target without making any investment at all at pipeline. So this is more or less what we are now today. Actually, after the Ukrainian war within Russia, I mean, Russian gas supplies to Europe is not continuing, so many countries, especially in the Southeast Europe, are demanding additional volumes of pipe gas because they have no access to LNG. For the Western Europe, it's not a big deal, I mean, to access this LNG, but for countries in the Southeast Europe, I think Azerbaijan is a very good alternative of gas supplier, as a gas supplier, and I think this Southern Gas Corridor may pave the way for additional gas supplies to those countries who are really in need. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you. What about expansion to the east for more sources of gas?
Of course, there are also promising gas fields to the further east of Azerbaijan, like Turkmenistan and other countries. I mean, as of today, I mean, we are already receiving some Turkmen gas through Iranian corridor, but in future years, I mean, we can easily have also access to Turkmen gas if we can make this Trans-Caspian pipeline. I mean, as long as the gas demand is strong, especially in big markets, big consuming markets like Europe, I think this new corridor will also be opened up sooner or later.
Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey and Bulgaria have signed a memorandum of understanding to advance a new green energy corridor aimed at transmitting and trading renewable energy across borders. Energy ministers from the four nations emphasised the strategic importance of inter-regional cooperation in renewable energy and energy security. The corridor will leverage Azerbaijan's renewable energy potential and aims to support the region's integration into European energy transmission systems. Joining me now to discuss this further is Carlo Marino, Vice President of the Italian-Azerbaijani Association and founder and director of Eurasiatica News from Rome in Italy. Thanks for joining us, Carlo. Now, how will this newly signed agreement accelerate regional cooperation and investment in green energy infrastructure?
For having me tonight. For me, in this very fast-changing scenario, the signature of the Memorandum of Understanding among these four countries for renewable energy and for regional cooperation is a very positive event. It is also an event which can be framed with the contemporary event of Samarkanda, where leaders of the European Union have met leaders of Central Asia for further cooperation. So we can also examine this event in a larger frame and consider that something in the global scenario is changing, above all in the field of collaboration for green energy. And it is interesting that Azerbaijan is the pivot of this new collaboration for green energy towards European Union countries.
So focusing in on the Caucasus and southeastern Europe, what role does the Green Energy Corridor play in enhancing cross-border electricity trade and energy security across this part of the world?
Yes, it is a very important role, and it's very positive that Azerbaijan is a leader in this event, and that the Memorandum of Understanding has been signed in Baku in an important international meeting. So Azerbaijan, first of all, is no more only a gas and oil state, but is also looking towards a new form of energy in order to produce green cooperation with other countries.
It was great to chat with you, Carlo. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, today is International Mine Awareness Day, and Azerbaijan is urging the international community to pressure Armenia into handing over complete and accurate mine maps. The Azerbaijani spokesperson of Foreign Affairs Ayhan Hajizadeh says that Armenia's minefield maps are only 25% accurate. That's according to an interview he had with Envoy magazine. He says that more than half of recent mine incidents have occurred in areas not covered by these charts. Armenia claims around 400,000 mines were planted. However, Azerbaijan estimates the figure to be closer to 1.5 million. Landmines continue to pose a serious threat to communities long after conflicts have ended, putting lives at risk, blocking progress and slowing recovery. It's a reminder of the need for global support and teamwork to clear these deadly remnants of war and help affected communities move forward.
Landmines are silent traps hidden in the ground, widely used during conflicts due to their low cost, ease of deployment, and long-lasting impact. To raise awareness about their dangers, the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action is observed every year on April 4th. This day highlights ongoing efforts to clear mines and assist victims, emphasising the need for global cooperation in addressing this threat. The threat posed by landmines is severe and ongoing, with over 100 million people worldwide at risk. The United Nations Mine Action Service, UNMAS, has spent over 20 years addressing the needs of communities affected by explosive hazards, focusing on the safety of civilians, peacekeepers, and humanitarians. Its work includes mine clearance, risk education, and support for affected populations. Every year, thousands of people around the world fall victim to landmines. According to the United Nations, one person is either killed or injured by these devices every hour, with children being particularly at risk. This highlights the persistent danger landmines pose to civilians, even long after conflicts have ended. Azerbaijan, deeply affected by landmines due to the Karabakh conflict, is one of the countries that actively raise awareness about this issue. Since the conflict began, approximately 4,000 people have fallen victim to landmines. Even after the conflict ended in 2020, over 380 people have lost their lives due to landmines, underlining the ongoing risk. The country is still in the process of clearing landmines from its territory, and experts suggest it could take decades to complete this task. In addition to the human toll, landmines also have significant environmental consequences. Landmines make land and resources inaccessible, causing overuse of remaining areas and soil degradation. They also harm biodiversity by triggering explosions or leaking chemicals into soil and water. Efforts observed on International Mine Awareness Day have led to greater global focus and resources dedicated to mine action, saving lives and restoring communities. However, continued international collaboration is necessary to address widespread contamination. Sustained funding, technical expertise and cooperation are critical to ensuring the safety of affected populations and completing demining efforts.
Joining me now is Ben Keith, international human rights barrister who is also representing the advisory board of the Campaign for Landmine Justice. Thanks for joining us, Ben. So could you talk me through the aims of the Campaign for Landmine Justice?
So the aim of the Campaign for Landmine Justice is to raise awareness of the scourge of landmines and also to try and provide some redress to the victims of landmines. So our job is to try and get agreement at the UN to potentially alter the Ottawa Convention on Landmines, and also to provide a system by which redress can be made to victims of landmines and communities affected by landmines, both the physical issue of the landmines themselves making the land unusable and the environmental impact, as well as the damage to individuals. And so the main thing that we propose in this is the establishment of a UN fund for the victims of landmines, and we are working with civil society and governments and permanent missions at the United Nations to try and work out a system that will enable landmine victims to receive some redress and compensation.
So focusing in on that global response to landmine harm, as you mentioned, you're wanting to move it from something that's more aid-based to more of a rights-based framework of accountability and compensation. Is that right?
Yes, it's to try and provide more practical redress than is currently available. Of course, nobody wants landmines to be to continue, but the real problem is that that is a long-term aim rather than a short, something we can achieve in the short term. And so something that we think is a practical step that can take place is the establishment of some form of compensatory mechanism to allow communities who are affected by landmines to receive financial redress to help them rebuild their communities.
That's really interesting insight there. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben.
No problem. Thank you.
Now, to commemorate the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action, a match between amputee football teams was held at Baku Olympic Stadium. The football match was jointly organised by the Azerbaijan Mine Action Agency and the Association of Football Federations of Azerbaijan.
Today at the Baku Olympic Stadium, a remarkable display of strength, resilience and hope is taking place. In a match unlike any other, a group of amputee football players whose lives were forever changed by landmine explosions are coming together to show that life and sport can continue after an unimaginable loss. These athletes are not just playing football, they are sharing a message, one of courage, perseverance and the urgent need to address the ongoing threat of landmines across the globe.
These players' journey started with a tragedy. Landmines planted in conflict zones, claiming their limbs and altering their lives forever. But through sports, they have found a path to healing. After spending several years in a rehabilitation centre, they refused to let their injuries define them. For example, Ekrem Teymurov, a passionate athlete before his injury, found his way back to sports.
When I found the football team, it was still newly established. I decided to give it a try to regain my physical activity. Now I play football professionally as well. There should be a great tournament in Azerbaijan. Our team is getting ready for the upcoming match.
While many of today's players lost their legs to landmine explosions, Farhad Ayubov is an amputee footballer who lost his leg after being shot by a sniper.
2019 yıl yanvar ayının 31'i biz dövüş tapşırığı yerine getirirken
On January 31st, 2019, while carrying out a combat mission in a dangerous area, I lost my left knee above the joint due to an enemy sniper shot. From that day on, I did not withdraw into myself. After being discharged from the hospital, during my rehabilitation period, this sport helped me regain my psychological well-being. Setting a goal and fighting for that goal is a motivation in itself.
From November 2020 to April 2025, a total of 388 people in Azerbaijan were affected by landmines, including 70 killed and 318 injured. Since 1991, more than 3,400 individuals in Azerbaijan have been impacted by landmines, among them 359 children and young people, as well as 38 women.
This is a very important initiative. We support these amputee football teams as part of the social rehabilitation of landmine victims. From 2020 to the present, 191,555 hectares of land have been cleared of mines and unexploded ordnance. As a result of these clearance operations, more than 36,000 anti-personnel mines, over 21,000 anti-tank mines, and more than 133,000 unexploded ordnances have been detected and neutralized.
Through their determination, they show that even in the face of hardship, progress is possible. In the ongoing effort to clear landmines, each step forward contributes to a safer world for all.
The Estonian Foreign Minister has announced that the European Union is considering suspending Georgia's visa-free access, though he didn't specify whether the move would affect all citizens or just government officials. However, with the EU Council already halting visa-free travel for Georgian diplomats in January, it's likely that this suspension will apply to everyone. Our correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili has more.
Estonia Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna has announced that the European Union is considering suspending visa-free travel for Georgia. Speaking in Brussels, Tsahkna stated that this process could begin with the consent of just 15 member states. This comes as Georgian government pushes forward with the new strategy. In November 2024, Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze announced that he was suspending talks on Georgia's bid to join the European Union. Such shift triggered public backlash and large-scale protests erupted in Tbilisi, with the demonstrators accusing the Georgian government for steering Georgia away from its European path. The European Union has warned the government that such developments could impact the country's European integration process. While it remains unclear when the EU will formally start to discuss visa suspension process, officials have signaled that that is a part of a broader response for what they describe as anti-democratic and anti-Western steps by the Georgian government. This follows the EU January decision to suspend visa-free travel for Georgian diplomats and officials, supported by several member states, including the Netherlands. Estonia first raised a broader visa suppression issue at the European Foreign Affairs Council meeting in January. This is Nina Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
You were watching A News. Thank you for staying with us and have a wonderful evening.